Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles. I've always believed in trusting the person you marry. What's the point of committing to someone if you have to second-guess everything they say? At least that's what I used to think. Lately, though, my wife had been testing that belief. It started with small things. Little shifts in behavior that didn't seem like much on their own but stacked up in a way I couldn't ignore. She used to be affectionate, always touching my arm when she spoke, running her fingers through my hair absent-mindedly as we watched TV. But lately, it was like I had become a piece of furniture in my own home. The occasional peck on the cheek was gone, replaced by a stiff nod or a forced smile. Then came the excuses. Oh, work is crazy this week. I'm just exhausted, babe. The girls and I are having a spa night. She had never been the kind of woman who needed a social life outside of us. Sure, she had friends, but girls' nights were a rare thing, until they suddenly became weekly, then twice a week. And each time, she came back looking too happy, too energized for someone who had just been hanging out with her friends. I would have brushed it off if not for the phone. She became obsessed with her phone. It was always on her, clutched in her hand, screen tilted away from me. If she wasn't scrolling through something, she was texting, smiling at messages she never shared, laughing under her breath before quickly locking the screen when I walked by. And then there were the late-night trips to the bathroom, where I could hear the quiet ding of messages coming in, followed by muffled typing. I wasn't an idiot. I knew something was off, but I had no proof. That's when I told my best friend, Eric. We had known each other since college, been through breakups, career struggles, and more than a few drunken nights where we planned to take over the world. If there was anyone I trusted, it was him. Man, you're overthinking it, he said, sipping his beer as we sat on my back porch. Women go through phases. She's probably just stressed. Stressed? I repeated, swirling the drink in my glass. Then why is she suddenly happier than ever when she's supposedly drowning in work? Why is she glued to her phone like her life depends on it? Eric leaned back, letting out a long breath. All right, I see your point, but what's your plan? You gonna just sit here and drive yourself insane? I shook my head. I need to know for sure. If I confront her now, she'll just deny it. His eyes flickered with something, hesitation maybe, but he nodded. All right, what are you thinking? I didn't answer immediately. The idea had been forming in my head for days now, but I hadn't wanted to say it out loud. Not until now. I'm setting up cameras, I said. Eric's brows lifted slightly. Cameras? 2 IP cameras. One in the living room, one in the bedroom. I clarified. Small enough that she won't notice, but clear enough to get what I need. Eric let out a low whistle. Damn, you sure about this? What if you find out something you don't want to see? I let out a humorless laugh. Then at least I'll know. That night, after my wife fell asleep, I got to work. I installed one camera on the bookshelf in the living room, angled perfectly toward the couch where she spent most of her time. The second camera went behind a decorative vent in the bedroom, tucked into the shadows but with a full view of the bed. I felt like a criminal setting them up. I hated that it had come to this, but the alternative, sitting in the dark, pretending everything was fine, was worse. The next morning, I told her I had to leave town for work. It wasn't a total lie. I had some business to take care of a few hours away, but I deliberately extended my trip. Told her I wouldn't be back until late the next evening. She barely reacted. No sadness. No hesitation. Just a casual, "Oh, okay. Have a safe trip, babe," before she practically shoved me out the door. That was all the confirmation I needed. The drive was agonizing. My hands kept itching to check the live feed, but I forced myself to wait. I needed her to feel comfortable, to think I was truly gone. So I spent the day pretending to care about work, checking into a cheap motel instead of going home. By evening, my patience was razor thin. I opened the app, logged in. The first feed loaded, a still, quiet image of my empty living room. I switched to the bedroom camera. The bed was made, untouched. No sign of her. I frowned. Where the hell was she? I flipped back to the living room feed, and there she was, sitting on the couch. Not alone. My stomach dropped. A man was there, leaning against the armrest, laughing with her. Not just any man. Eric, my best friend. I sat there, gripping my phone, as the two of them laughed like they didn't have a care in the world. Eric reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't pull away. She leaned into him. And then, just like that, he kissed her. I felt like my soul had just been ripped out of my body. She melted into it, her hands roaming his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. They weren't hesitating. This wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. This had been happening for a long time. I should have been furious. I should have thrown my phone across the room, driven back home, and torn the door off its hinges. But I didn't. I just stared, silent, numb. And as I watched, Eric pulled away for a brief moment. He glanced at his watch, and then he said something that made my blood turn to ice. "We need to wrap this up before your second guest arrives." I stopped breathing. Second guest? I kept watching, my pulse pounding in my ears. Eric stood up, buttoning his shirt. He whispered something in her ear, something that made her giggle as she pushed him toward the door. Then, like it was routine, he slipped out. 2 minutes later, my wife adjusted her hair, checked her phone, and went to the door again. She opened it. And this time, the man standing there was my brother. I gripped my phone so tight my knuckles turned white. The screen flickered, showing my brother standing in the doorway. He was smiling, casual as ever, as my wife reached for his arm and pulled him inside like it was nothing. Couldn't breathe. My best friend had just left. And now my own brother was standing there, looking at my wife the same way I used to. The betrayal wasn't just deep. It was limitless. I leaned forward, my stomach twisting into knots as I watched the two people I should have trusted most walk into my home like I was nothing but a ghost. My wife was still flushed, her hair slightly disheveled from kissing Eric minutes ago. But did she care? Not at all. She wrapped her arms around my brother's neck, grinning up at him like she was the happiest woman on earth. And then, she kissed him too. Not hesitant. Not unsure. Full on, tongue and all, like a woman who had done this 1,000 times before. I staggered to my feet from the motel bed, my breath coming out in short, sharp bursts. My body wanted to move, to grab my keys, to speed back home, to kick the damn door down and drag both of them into the street for everyone to see. But I forced myself to sit back down. No, not yet. I wasn't going to storm in like a fool. I was going to ruin them both. But first, I needed to know everything. I watched as they sat together on the couch, her legs draped over his lap like some love-struck teenager. "Long day?" she teased, running her fingers along his arm. My brother sighed dramatically. "You have no idea. If only I had a woman who could make it all better." She giggled, curling into him. "Oh, don't worry. You have me." I nearly crushed my phone in my hand. This wasn't casual cheating. This was intimate, familiar, routine. They weren't just sneaking around, they were comfortable. This wasn't new. This had been going on for a long, long time. My mind was spinning as I started connecting the dots. The sudden need for girls' nights. The way she started pulling away from me emotionally. My brother always dropping by unannounced. Eric's weird hesitation when I first mentioned my suspicions. Had they all known? Had Eric known my wife was sleeping with my brother too? Had my brother known about Eric? Or worse, were they working together? The thought made my stomach churn. But then came the real dagger. My brother laughed, shaking his head. "You're so reckless. You know that? We're pushing it." "Relax," she purred, climbing onto his lap. "He's still out of town." Like I was nothing. Like I was just some inconvenience in their secret world. I sat there, frozen, as they became a tangled mess of limbs right on my couch. Right where I used to sit. Right where we used to talk about our future. I barely managed to hit the record button. This footage was going to destroy them both. I forced myself to watch for another hour, even though every second felt like someone was slowly driving a knife into my chest. I needed details. I needed leverage. Because I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to humiliate them. So I took notes. The way my wife reassured my brother that I'd never find out. The casual way she mentioned deleting texts and avoiding suspicion. The way they laughed about poor, clueless me. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might break. That's when my brother got up to leave. He kissed her one last time at the door, grinning like a man without a care in the world. "You're incredible," he murmured against her lips. "Just keep playing your role a little longer." I went cold. Playing her role? What the hell did that mean? She smirked, trailing a finger down his chest. "Oh, don't worry. I've got him completely fooled." She pulled away, smiling knowingly. By the time he realizes what's happening, he'll already have lost everything. My entire world tilted. I stared at the screen, my mind racing with possibilities. This wasn't just cheating. This was something bigger, something planned. I needed more. I had to dig deeper. With shaking hands, I logged into our shared online banking. And there it was. Withdrawals I never made. New accounts I didn't recognize. Credit cards maxed out in my name. They weren't just screwing around. They were setting me up for something. Something huge. My wife and my brother weren't just betraying me. They were stealing from me. They were setting me up to lose everything. I took a deep breath. This wasn't just a revenge story anymore. This was war. And I was going to make them pay. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling, my stomach twisted into a painful knot. This wasn't just cheating. This was a setup. And I had almost walked right into it. My wife and my brother had been siphoning money from our accounts for months, funneling it into an entirely new life without me. Eric, my so-called best friend, had been part of their little inner circle, probably feeding them information about my suspicions, keeping me just blind enough to let my guard down. And when they were ready, they were going to leave me with nothing. No house, no savings, no future. I exhaled slowly, my vision darkening at the edges. I had to move carefully. If I confronted them now, if I tipped them off before I had everything in place, they'd turn this around on me before I could burn them to the ground. So I forced myself to think. And I made a call. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the one person I knew could handle this. Derek Vaughn. He wasn't just any lawyer. He was a specialist in financial crimes and asset protection. I had helped him out with some contract work a few years back, and while we weren't exactly friends, we had a mutual understanding. He owed me one. The phone rang twice before a groggy voice answered. "Vaughn, it's me," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I need your help, and I need it now." There was a pause. Then the sound of him shifting, probably sitting up in bed. "What's going on?" I took a slow breath. "My wife is stealing from me. My brother is in on it. They've been funneling money out of our accounts. I just found a hidden bank account under my name that I never opened. They're setting me up for something. Something big." A pause. "You have proof." "I have everything." Vaughn was silent for a moment, and then I heard the rustle of papers as he probably reached for a notepad. "All right. First things first, we need to freeze any assets that are still in your name before they can touch them. Do not confront them yet. If they suspect they'll try to cover their tracks." "I already figured that much," I muttered. "Good," he said. "Now listen to me carefully. I need you to send me everything you've got. Screenshots, account statements, transaction records, whatever you have. I'm going to file a petition to put a hold on all shared assets under suspicion of fraud. That'll buy us time before they can move anything else." I nodded, already pulling up the files on my laptop. "And then, Vaughn said, his voice turning sharp, "we plan the next move. But whatever you do, keep playing along. Act normal. If they think you're onto them, they'll bolt, and they might take whatever's left with them." I clenched my jaw. "Fine. But I want them ruined." Vaughn let out a slow exhale. "If what you're saying is true, they'll be buried so deep they won't see daylight for years." I sent over the files, then ended the call. I had done the smart thing, the logical thing, but logic wasn't enough to cool the fire burning in my gut. I didn't just want to protect what was mine. I wanted to watch them fall, playing along while planning their downfall. For the next 2 days, I did exactly what Vaughn told me to do. I acted like I knew nothing. I sent my wife casual texts, asked about her day, Told her I couldn't wait to see her. She responded like she always did. Sweet on the surface, empty underneath. She had no idea that I had seen everything. That I knew the truth. My brother? Same thing. He even called me on the second day, casual as ever. Hey man, how's the trip? I had to force myself not to grip the phone too hard. Not bad. Just wrapping up some work. What about you? He chuckled. Same old, same old. You know how it is. Oh, I knew exactly how it was. The rage in my chest was a living thing, clawing at me, begging me to explode. But I swallowed it down and played my role. Because my revenge wasn't going to be a fight in the driveway. It was going to be the destruction of everything they had built on my back. The final confirmation. A slip-up. On the third night, she slipped up. I was on my laptop, checking our shared calendar. Something I rarely did. When I saw a scheduled appointment under her name. A meeting with a divorce attorney. I clicked on the entry. The location was a high-end law firm downtown. The time? 2 days from now. She had already started the process of cutting me loose. Probably thinking that by the time I figured it out, she and my brother would be long gone with everything that used to belong to me. I let out a slow breath and sat back. She thought she had won. She thought she had me trapped. That's when I knew. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to obliterate her entire world. The perfect setup for the ultimate payback. I wasn't just going to wait for the divorce papers. I wasn't going to let her control the timing of my downfall. No, I was going to make the first move. I was going to take everything back. The money, the house, my dignity, and I was going to make sure she never saw it coming. By the time I was done, she'd be left with nothing but the consequences of her own betrayal. And I'd be the one watching her world burn. I had 2 days before my wife's meeting with the divorce attorney. 2 days before she would officially try to cut me loose, thinking she had already won. 2 days before my brother, the man I grew up with, would likely help her finalize the plan to leave me penniless and humiliated. But she had no idea that I was already 3 steps ahead. She thought she was playing me. She thought I was still the clueless husband who trusted her without question. She thought I was going to roll over and accept my fate. She was so damn wrong. The morning after I found the divorce attorney appointment on our shared calendar, I called Vaughn. It's time, I said. All right, he replied, his voice sharp, businesslike. We're freezing all joint assets today. I'm filing fraud complaints on the unauthorized withdrawals. We're locking down the house and making sure she can't take a cent more. What about the hidden accounts? I asked, pacing the motel room. They'll be flagged for investigation. That means she won't be able to access them without raising suspicion. If she tries to transfer anything, it'll trigger a legal hold. I smiled coldly. Perfect. The second she walked into that law office, she'd realize her entire financial plan had collapsed. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I needed a setting, a place where everything would come crashing down in one single moment. It had to be public. It had to be unavoidable. And then I had the perfect idea. Our house. The same house she had been planning to steal from me. I called her that morning, keeping my voice light. Hey babe. Hey! She answered, sounding sweet as ever, like she hadn't spent the last few months stabbing me in the back. Listen, I said. I was thinking, I've been so busy with work lately, and I feel like we haven't had a real moment together. She hesitated. Oh, I could almost hear her calculating. Yeah, I continued. How about we have a little dinner at home on Friday night? Just us. I'll cook, open a bottle of wine, talk about us. She bought it instantly. That sounds amazing, she said, her voice light with hidden victory. She probably thought this was her final manipulation. Me, the sad, desperate husband, trying to win her back while she was already planning to destroy me. I smiled. Good. Let her believe that. Because Friday night, she wasn't just going to lose me. She was going to lose everything. My wife thought it was just going to be the 2 of us. But I had a different guest list in mind. My parents. My wife's parents. My brother. A few of her closest friends. And most importantly, her divorce attorney. I wanted every single one of them to be there when the truth came out. I sent out a group message, telling them that I had a big announcement to make, that I wanted everyone to be there to celebrate an important milestone. Of course, I didn't tell my wife. She'd find out soon enough. The night of the reckoning. By the time Friday night rolled around, I was calm. Not angry, not anxious, just ice-cold focused. I set the table, lit some candles, and made dinner, just like I had promised. My wife arrived right on time, dressed up like a woman who thought she was about to get away with murder. She kissed me on the cheek. "This is so sweet of you." I smiled. "Anything for you." She had no idea that in just a few minutes, her entire world was going to come crashing down. The betrayal exposed. At exactly 7:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. My wife frowned. "Who's that?" I wiped my hands on a towel. "Oh, I invited a few people. I thought it'd be nice to have company." Before she could respond, I opened the door, and in walked everyone. Her parents, my parents, her friends, and her divorce lawyer who looked very confused. My wife went pale. What's going on?" she stammered, her eyes darting to me. I walked over to the TV, where I had my laptop connected. "Well," I said, "since we're all here, I figured now would be the perfect time to show everyone what I found out this week." I pressed play, and on the screen, the video footage from the hidden cameras. My wife kissing Eric on our couch. My wife kissing my brother minutes later. Their whispered plans about robbing me blind. My brother accepting the money transfer from my wife. The room went dead silent. Then, "What the hell is this?" my father-in-law exploded. My wife stumbled backward, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. This isn't." Her mother burst into tears. Her lawyer looked absolutely stunned. My brother? Frozen. I turned to my wife, my voice calm. "You were going to leave me, weren't you?" She gasped for air, shaking her head. "No, You were going to take everything. You and my own brother. You were planning it for months." I walked over to the table, grabbed the manila folder I had prepared, and tossed it onto the floor in front of her. "That's every financial transaction you made behind my back. Every dollar you stole. Every lie you told. Asterisk asterisk." She collapsed into a chair, covering her face. My brother? He tried to speak, but my father shut him down immediately. "You absolute disgrace," my dad growled. "You're not my son. You're nothing." My wife turned to her parents, but they wouldn't even look at her. The room was suffocating with tension. And then, the final blow. "By the way," I said, pulling out the legal document Vaughn had sent me that morning, "all of our assets are frozen. Every account has been flagged. The house? It's mine. Your new place? You won't be moving into it." I let the words sink in. "You thought you were going to take everything from me?" I whispered. "But now? You're leaving with nothing." My wife let out a strangled sob. My brother looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor. The silence was perfect. And then, I picked up my jacket, turned to my guests, and smiled. "Thank you all for coming." And I walked out the door, leaving my wife and my brother to deal with the wreckage they created. I walked out of that house feeling like a man who had just set fire to a prison and walked away free. Behind me, I could still hear the wreckage. My wife sobbing, my brother stumbling over excuses, my father's furious shouting. I had won. I had taken back everything they tried to steal from me. But it wasn't over yet, because there was still one more traitor left unpunished. Eric, my best friend, the man I had trusted with everything, who had laughed with me, shared drinks with me, stabbed me in the back while pretending to have my best interests at heart. He thought I had forgotten about him. He thought I was so focused on my wife and brother that I wouldn't come for him next. He was so damn wrong. The friend's final reckoning. The night after the dinner, I made one final phone call. To Eric. "Hey man," I said, my voice calm, controlled. He hesitated. Hey, how are you holding up?" I smirked. "The nerve of this guy. Better than you," I said. "Meet me at Joe's bar tomorrow night. We need to talk." Silence. Then, "Yeah, sure." He thought he was safe. He had no idea what was coming. The public exposure of a liar. Joe's bar was one of those places that had been around forever. Dim lighting, cheap drinks, filled with locals who had known each other for years. Eric was already there when I walked in, sipping his beer, looking a little too comfortable. I slid into the seat across from him. "Glad you came," he said, forcing a grin. I smiled back. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and set it on the table. "Press play," I said. He frowned. "What?" I leaned in. "Play. The video." His hesitation told me everything. But he did it. And as soon as he saw the footage of him and my wife, his face went pale. "You?" "Yeah," I said. "I saw everything. You and Claire. You and my brother whispering in corners like a couple of criminals. You think I didn't notice?" He swallowed hard. "Look, man." "Shut up," I said, my voice deadly calm. I tapped my phone screen, and suddenly, the TV above the bar lit up. With the same video, the entire bar fell silent. Every regular, every bartender, every old man nursing his drink turned to look at the screen. And there he was, Eric, kissing my wife, laughing about how easy I was to manipulate, joking about how he had been playing me like a fool for months. His face turned red, then white, then red again. People started whispering. A few started laughing. Then someone in the back muttered, "What a piece of shit." I looked him dead in the eyes. "How does it feel?" I asked. "Knowing everyone sees you for what you really are?" Eric stood up abruptly, knocking over his beer. "You!" He looked around, realizing he had nowhere to run. "You deserve this," I said, standing up too. "Every bit of it. You weren't just a bad friend. You were a coward. You hid behind our friendship while sleeping with my wife. While lying to my face. People were still staring. He knew his reputation was gone." "You're pathetic," I said, throwing a few bills on the table for my drink. "Enjoy being the most hated man in town." And with that I walked out, leaving him to drown in the wreckage of his own betrayal. The unexpected twist. I should have felt satisfied. I had exposed my wife, destroyed my brother, publicly humiliated Eric in the worst way possible. But as I sat in my car, staring at the city lights, something didn't feel right. I had taken everything from them. But had I really won? Because at the end of the day, I had still lost everything too. My wife, my marriage, the future I thought I had, even my own brother, even Eric, the man I had once considered a brother. They were all gone. And now I had to figure out what came next. I took a deep breath, turned on the ignition, and drove toward whatever the hell was waiting for me next. Because for the first time in months, I was finally free. And that was the real victory. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.